Earlier in this class, we discussed market segmentation, which is a fundamental building block of marketing strategy. In this module, we discuss another key element of marketing strategy, that is product positioning. Positioning means creating an image or set of perceptions about your product among consumers, and this requires an understanding of how your product is perceived relative to your competitors in the market. In order to understand how consumers perceive products, we use a tool called perceptual mapping. With this technique, we can build a map of how products are located in the marketplace based on consumer perceptions of their similarity to each other. The questions we are seeking to answer with perceptual mapping are: how are products perceived by customers? What attributes do they believe these products have? Who am I competing with? That is, which of my competitors compete most closely with my product in consumers' minds? Is there an opportunity for a new product or for repositioning existing products? That is, are there gaps in the market where I can compete more effectively? The best way to understand how perceptual mapping works is by taking an example. Let's say you conduct a survey about people's perception of cars and ask respondents, to what extent do the following words describe each of these cars? And then you give them a set of cars to rate, such as Saab, Cadillac, Ford, etc. Respondents are asked to rate the cars on a scale from 1 to 7, where 1 means describes very poorly and 7 means describes very well. The attributes on which the cars are rated are luxurious, sporty, and economical. Based on the responses from a sample of consumers, you can calculate the average rating for each car on each attribute, and that yields this table. Based on the table, you can come up with a perceptual map showing how consumers perceive cars relative to each other. Let's hold off for the moment on the question of how you draw the map, and let's see what we can learn from the map. Here's how to read this map. The arrows, called attribute vectors, show the attributes or dimensions along which the brands are positioned, and each arrow shows the direction in which the attribute amount increases. The circles are the locations where the different cars are positioned. The further out a car is in the direction of the arrow, the higher the amount of the attribute it is believed to have. So a car that is positioned furthest in the direction of the vector is perceived as having the highest amount of that attribute. It's important to remember that it doesn't matter how far the circle is from the arrow. The only thing that matters is where it lies in the direction of the arrow. For example, to see where Saab lies on the luxury dimension, you can draw a line from that circle that is perpendicular to the luxury vector. Here Saab lies at the point A on the luxury vector. Similarly, if you draw a line from Jaguar's location perpendicular to the luxury dimension, it intersects the dimension at B, which is further out on the luxury dimension than A. So this means Jaguar is perceived as having more luxury than Saab. So now let's ask a few questions that a manager might ask when looking at such a map. Which cars are highest in each of the 3 attributes, luxury, sportiness, and economy? If you draw perpendicular lines to the 3 dimensions from each of the circles, you'll see that Jaguar is highest in luxury and sportiness, while Honda and Ford are both seen as being high in economy, with Ford being a little higher. Cadillac does not rate highly on any of these, but instead is perceived as being low in sportiness. A related question you might be wondering about is, why are the luxury and economy attributes pointing in opposite directions? What does that mean? The answer is that pointing in opposite directions means that as one increases, the other decreases. That is, cars that are high in luxury are low in economy and vice versa. In other words, the 2 attributes are negatively correlated, and that is indicated by their vectors pointing in opposite directions. In general, the angle between attribute vectors indicates their degree of correlation. The smaller the angle between them, the greater the correlation. The next question a manager might ask is, which cars compete most closely with each other? It seems likely that Honda and Ford would compete most closely because they are closest to each other on this map, which means they are perceived as being most similar to each other. Notice that Cadillac, located on the bottom, has no close competitors because no other brand is located close to it. The last question we might ask is there a market opportunity for a new product offering? Which is another way of saying, is there a gap in the market? To answer this, you have to look at the areas in the map where there are no competitors, where literally there is a gap or an empty space. We can see that on this map, there is an empty space in the top left quadrant, meaning that there is no car that is high in sportiness and high in economy. You could also argue that there is a gap in the bottom right part of the map because there is no car that is high in luxury, like Jaguar, and low in sportiness, like Cadillac. Now, this may represent an opportunity to introduce a new car with that combination of attributes, either a sporty but economical car or a luxurious and unsporty car. But it is important to ask yourself why there is no existing car with those attributes. It may be that such a combination is technically infeasible. For example, it is simply not possible to make a car with sports car performance that is also high in economy. Or it could be that there is no demand for a car with that combination of attributes. For example, consumers simply may not be looking for a luxury car that is also low in sportiness. So one needs to be careful in drawing conclusions based on a gap in the market. Now that you know how to read a map and draw conclusions from it, let's see how you can make a map like this. It's a mathematically complex operation, so it's not easy to draw a map based on attribute ratings as we have done. The software for mapping is usually complicated and expensive. Fortunately, there is free software that allows you to draw a basic map using a Windows PC. It's called PerMap, and you can download it at the link shown. Start with average attribute ratings for a set of objects, such as those in this table. Next, create a text file containing the commands you need and the data you want to use for generating the map. The file should be created in a plain text editor such as Notepad or using the text format in Word. The software is very unforgiving of any errors in the input file, so make sure to read the instructions carefully and see the tips below in order to avoid problems. For reference, here is the data file we created for the example with the cars. Next, open the PerMap application and watch the video at the link shown here to see a demo of how to run PerMap. The video shows you how to set the options correctly and how to play with the map to make it easier to interpret. Notice that the circles in the map can be rotated, flipped on the axis, zoomed in, or moved without changing the interpretation of the map. That is, because the interpretation is based on the relative position of the circles to each other, the absolute position does not matter. Doing things like rotating the map, zooming in, etc. does not change the relative position, so it's fine to do that. Here's what the map will look like. Save a screenshot of the map and add text boxes to label the arrows for ease of interpretation. The arrows will have numbers identifying them, but no labels. The numbers correspond to the order in which you listed the attributes in the file, so add those labels to make sure you remember what those attributes are.